The rain hammered down on the streets of Seoul, cold and unrelenting. Amani, her dress soaked and stomach swollen with her unborn child, stood trembling outside the Park family estate. Just hours ago, the people she trusted most, her in-laws, had torn her life apart. Forged evidence, a falsified DNA test, accusations of betrayal, they had stripped her of her status, her home, her dignity. "A woman like you will never carry the Ha bloodline," her mother-in-law spat, shoving her into the storm. Alone, afraid, and 9 months from giving birth, Amani had nowhere to go. But she refused to break. Every step she took in the dark alleys of the city, every hidden breath, was a promise, she would survive. Somewhere in prison, Ha Jun, the feared heir of the Ha syndicate, sat behind iron bars, unaware of her plight. Or so she thought. Little did she know, every move she made, every shadow she trusted, or didn't, was part of a larger, dangerous game. Secrets, betrayal, and revenge were converging, and when the man she believed hated her finally walked out of prison, nothing would ever be the same. One moment could change everything. The streets of Seoul were alive with neon reflections dancing across rain-soaked pavement, but Amani barely noticed. Every corner, every shadow seemed to move with intent, as if the city itself were watching her. She kept her head down, clutching the small leather bag that held her most precious possession, not jewelry, not money, but a single photograph of her unborn child, Eli, and a worn note Ha Jun had once given her, "I'll find you, no matter what." The betrayal had cut deeper than the cold rain. The people she had trusted most, her in-laws, had plotted behind her back, weaving lies and fabricating evidence that painted her as a traitor. But the deeper truth, the part they hadn't guessed, was that Amani was smarter than they ever imagined. She wasn't just surviving, she was observing. Every alley she passed, every passerby who seemed ordinary, was a piece of a puzzle she didn't yet fully understand. Somewhere across the city, whispers spoke of a shadow moving with purpose. Not all enemies wore suits or carried weapons, some were the ones who smiled at her in passing, pretending ignorance. Amani had learned to read the subtle cues, a glance held too long, a step too deliberate, a word left unsaid. Each one could be a clue, or a trap. Ha Jun, meanwhile, was a storm waiting to break. Rumors of his release had already begun to circulate, and the underworld was buzzing with speculation. But what no one realized was that the man they feared most was only a fragment of the game. Amani had discovered threads of the Ha syndicate's secrets that even he had never seen. Her survival wasn't just about the child, it was about leverage, about knowledge that could unravel empires. She ducked into a narrow alleyway, the neon signs from above casting jagged patterns on the walls. A faint sound, a footstep, or maybe a shadow shifting, made her freeze. Instinctively, she reached for the small weapon she had hidden beneath her coat, training herself for moments just like this. Yet her mind raced faster than her pulse. Who was watching? Was this a rival syndicate operative? A spy planted by her in-laws? Or, someone from the family she once thought she knew? Every choice now carried weight. Every step, every breath, every interaction could change the course of her life, or end it. She had 9 months of secrets, one unborn child, and a burning fire for justice that refused to die. And though she didn't yet know it, the moment when Ha Jun would step back into her life was closer than she imagined, and with it, a series of revelations that would leave the Ha family, and the audience, breathless. For Amani, the game had only just begun, and every shadow held a secret, every whisper a threat, and every choice a consequence that could shift the balance of power in ways no one expected. Amani moved quickly, her shoes slapping against the slick pavement as she navigated the twisting alleys of Seoul. The rain had eased to a steady drizzle, but the air still smelled of wet asphalt and smoke. Every shadow seemed alive, shifting with intent, and every passerby made her stomach tighten. She clutched the strap of her small bag against her chest, her other hand brushing instinctively over the curve of her belly. Eli's safety was everything. She paused briefly at the corner, peering down a narrow side street. Nothing. Just the hum of neon signs and the occasional screech of tires. Yet the feeling lingered, a prickling at the back of her neck, a sense that someone was moving just out of sight. Her pulse quickened. She had learned not to trust the streets, not to trust anyone. One wrong step could cost her everything. Amani's mind raced. She wasn't just running anymore, she was planning. Every alley she passed, every abandoned doorway, every hidden passage was a piece of a larger puzzle. The Haas syndicate was powerful, but they had weaknesses. Things she had overheard, hints she had gathered, they could give her leverage. For the first time, she realized survival wasn't enough. If she played carefully, she might hold power over the people who thought they had destroyed her. A faint noise made her freeze. Footsteps, deliberate and slow, echoing faintly against the brick walls. Her eyes darted, scanning every corner, every shadow. Was it an enemy? One of her in-laws' spies sent to find her? Or could it be someone else, someone who might actually help her? Her instincts told her to run, but her curiosity, and the need to understand, rooted her to the spot. She inched forward, hugging the wet wall of the alley. Every sense was alert, breath held, muscles tense, ears straining. The footsteps grew louder, then paused. A shape detached from the darkness, moving toward her with careful steps. Her heart thudded so loudly she feared it would give her away. Amani pressed herself against the wall, barely daring to breathe. The figure drew closer. She couldn't make out a face, couldn't see a weapon, couldn't guess the intent. Friend or foe, ally or predator, everything hung in that moment. Her mind raced. She had survived storms, betrayal, and violence, but nothing had ever made her feel this exposed. A single wrong move and it could all end here, in this narrow, rain-slicked alley, with Eli just a heartbeat away. The shadow stopped, only a few feet from her, and a low voice whispered, just loud enough for her to hear, "Amani." She froze completely, her pulse spiking, unable to tell whether to flee or step forward. The voice said her name again, softer this time. Amani's fingers curled tight around her bag as she stepped back, ready to run. The shadow lifted both hands slowly, palms open, a sign of peace. As the figure moved into the weak glow of a streetlight, she saw a woman about her age, rain dripping from a dark coat, eyes sharp but tired. "Don't scream," the woman said. "I'm not here to hurt you." Amani's heart pounded. "Then why follow me?" "Because if I didn't," the woman replied, "someone worse would have." The woman introduced herself as Min Seo. The name sent a chill through Amani. Min Seo had once worked against the Ha family, long before Amani ever entered their world. Stories said she had lost everything because of them, her brother, her home, her future. She was supposed to be gone. Or dead. "I know who you are," Min Seo said quietly. "And I know what they did to you." Amani's first instinct was to deny everything. Trust had cost her too much already. "You should leave," she said. "Being near me is dangerous." Min Seo shook her head. "Danger is already here. I'm offering you a shield." They moved deeper into the alley, away from the open street. Rain dripped from fire escapes above them. Min Seo spoke fast, as if time itself was chasing them. She explained how the Ha family had made enemies for years, how some people never forgot. Helping Amani wasn't kindness, it was payback. "I don't help for free," Min Seo said. "But right now, our goals match." Amani studied her face, searching for lies. All she saw was anger sharpened into control. It scared her, but it also felt real. Still, her hand stayed close to her belly, protective. "How do I know this isn't another trap?" she asked. Min Seo met her gaze. "Because if I wanted you gone, you wouldn't be standing here." The words hung heavy between them. Amani knew she was right. Whoever Min Seo was, she had power. The kind that came from knowing secrets. As they reached the end of the alley, Minasio stopped. Her voice dropped to a whisper. There's something else you need to know. Amani felt her chest tighten. What? Minasio leaned closer. Someone inside the Ha family is watching you. Feeding them updates. Your moves, your hiding places, everything. Amani's breath caught. Who? Minasio shook her head slowly. I don't know yet. But they're close. And they won't stop. Amani stared out at the street ahead, suddenly unsure where safety ended and danger began. If the Ha family was already this close, then running might no longer be enough. The room Minasio led Amani into looked ordinary at first glance, but the longer Amani stood there, the more she felt the weight of it. The walls were lined with old shelves filled with files. A cracked computer screen glowed softly on a metal desk. Nothing screamed danger, yet everything felt dangerous. Minasio shut the door and locked it. This place doesn't exist, she said. No cameras. No signals. That's why we can talk. Amani stayed standing. Her heart was still racing from the alley. Talk about what? Minasio pulled out a folder and placed it on the desk. About what they never thought you understood. Inside were numbers, symbols, and names written in neat rows. At first, Amani felt lost. Then her eyes widened. She had seen this format before. Years ago, when she helped organize documents for the Ha household, she noticed similar patterns. Everyone told her it was meaningless paperwork. But it wasn't. These are off-ledger accounts, Amani said slowly. They don't appear in official records. Minasio looked up, surprised. You recognize them? Amani nodded. They're safety nets. If one part of the syndicate falls, these keep it alive. Her mind raced as memories returned. Late nights. Locked drawers. Quiet warnings never meant for her ears. She had absorbed more than anyone realized. Not because she was powerful, but because she was invisible. They underestimated you, Minasio said. That's how people like you survive. Amani felt something new settle in her chest. Strength didn't always mean fists or guns. Sometimes it meant knowing when to stay quiet and when to remember everything. Minasio tapped the screen. There are also alliances. Secret ones. People the Ha family would never admit to working with. Amani leaned closer. And weaknesses? Minasio smiled thinly. Plenty. And most of them trace back to information you touched. For the first time since being thrown out, Amani felt taller. Not braver, clearer. She wasn't just running anymore. She was holding something dangerous. A sharp beep cut through the room. Minasio froze. That shouldn't happen. A message appeared on the screen. No sender. No warning. We know what you have, act carefully. Amani's breath caught. Her hands tightened over her belly. The walls felt closer now. They're already inside, she whispered. Minasio nodded. And they're afraid. Amani stared at the screen, understanding one thing clearly. Knowledge had made her a target. And also a threat. The next morning, Minasio insisted they move before sunrise. Once they sense fear, she said, they strike fast. Amani wrapped her coat tight and followed her into the waking city. Vendors were setting up stalls, calling out prices as steam rose from food carts. The noise should have felt safe. It didn't. At first, Amani thought she was imagining it. A man paused when she paused. Another turned too quickly when she looked back. Her heart began to pound. Minasio noticed too. She changed direction without a word, slipping into the crowded marketplace where voices overlapped and bodies pressed close. That's when it happened. A rough hand brushed Amani's arm, not by accident. She gasped and spun around. The man smiled, but his eyes were cold. Another appeared behind Minicio. Then another. They weren't yelling. They weren't rushing. They were closing in slowly, like hunters who knew they had time. Split, Minicio whispered. Amani didn't ask how. She ducked between two stalls, nearly knocking over a basket of fruit. A vendor shouted, but she didn't stop. Her breath came fast. Her feet slipped on wet stone. Someone grabbed her sleeve. She twisted hard, letting the fabric tear, and kept running. The crowd thickened near a street crossing. Amani pushed through, apologizing, crying out. Panic rose in her chest, but she forced her mind to stay sharp. She remembered what Minicio taught her, never move like prey. She slowed suddenly, turned, and blended into a group of women arguing over fabric prices. The men rushed past her. Amani didn't breathe until they were gone. She slipped into a public restroom and locked herself inside a stall, hands shaking. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She pressed a hand to her belly, whispering, "We're okay." She stayed there until her breathing slowed. When she stepped back outside, Minicio was waiting across the street, face pale but steady. "They were professionals," she said. "Not street thugs." "They knew my face," Amani replied. "They wanted me alive." Minicio nodded. "That means someone gave clear orders." They moved again, quieter this time. In a narrow side street, Minicio stopped at a closed shop and pried open a loose board near the door. Inside was a folded paper. She handed it to Amani. It was a notice. Small. Easy to miss. A legal update dated days ago. Amani's eyes locked onto one line. Early release approved pending final review. Her breath caught. This is Hajun. Minicio watched her closely. If it's true, everything changes. Amani folded the paper slowly. Hope and fear twisted together in her chest. If Hajun was coming back, the world was about to shift. And so was the danger. Amani didn't sleep that night. The paper about Hajun's possible release stayed folded in her pocket, heavy as stone. Hope was dangerous, Minicio warned her. Still, Amani couldn't push it away. If he was coming back, she had to be ready, for anything. They moved Eli before dawn. The safe place was small and quiet, hidden above an old workshop. Only one window. One door. Minicio said few people knew it existed. Amani checked the locks twice before laying Eli down on a thin mattress. He slept peacefully, unaware of how fragile his safety was. Amani knelt beside him, brushing a finger across his cheek. "I'll protect you," she whispered. Saying it out loud made it real, and terrifying. Training began that same day. Minicio taught her how to watch without being seen. How to listen for patterns in footsteps. How to move through a room and always know where the exits were. Amani learned how to use simple objects for defense, how to stay calm when fear tried to take over. She wasn't fast. She wasn't strong. But she was careful, and she learned quickly. They also practiced communication. Short messages. Code words. Signals that looked harmless to anyone else. Amani wrote them down, then burned the paper. Nothing could be left behind. At night, when Eli cried, Amani held him close, rocking gently. Every sound outside made her tense. Every passing voice felt too near. She hated how exposed motherhood made her feel. Loving him meant having something the world could take away. But it also gave her strength. One afternoon, Minicio stepped out to meet a contact. Amani stayed behind, watching Eli nap. From the open window, voices drifted up from the street below. At first, she ignored them. Then she heard a word that made her blood run cold. Eli. Her breath stopped. She leaned closer to the window, heart racing. Two men stood near the shop entrance, talking quietly. One laughed. "The kid named Eli," he said. "That's the one." Amani pulled back, shaking. They hadn't said her name, but they didn't need to. They were close. Too close. She locked the window and reached for Eli, pressing him against her chest. Her hands trembled, but her mind was sharp. They knew. And if they knew his name, it meant they were already inside her world. The prison gates opened with a low metal groan, and Ha-Jun stepped out without looking back. The air outside felt sharper, cleaner, but heavier too. He was taller than most men around him, his shoulders broader, his eyes colder. 2 years behind walls had not weakened him. They had sharpened him. A black car waited at the curb. His men bowed as he passed, fear and respect mixed in their eyes. Ha-Jun slid into the back seat, hands calm, mind already moving. He asked only one question. "My wife." The driver hesitated. "The family said she left." Ha-Jun's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Silence was his way of listening. As the car moved through the city, he watched Seoul rush past the window. Too many changes. Too many new faces. Power had shifted while he was gone. He could feel it. Enemies always moved when the lion was caged. At the estate, his parents greeted him with smiles that felt too stiff. A welcome meal waited. Servants bowed low. His mother spoke quickly, filling the room with words. Amani had taken money. She had shamed the family. She had run. Ha-Jun listened. He always did. Later, as servants cleared the table, his eyes drifted across the room. He noticed everything, the way hands shook, the way voices dropped. Then he saw it. A thin gold bracelet on a young servant's wrist. His breath slowed. He knew that bracelet. Amani had worn it every day. Simple. Faded. She said it reminded her of home. He had once fixed the clasp himself when it broke. No one else should have it. "Stop," Ha-Jun said. The room froze. He stood and walked toward the servant. She trembled as he lifted her wrist gently. "Where did this come from?" he asked, voice quiet. She swallowed. It was given to me, sir." "By who?" The servant looked toward the floor. "A woman," she whispered. "Months ago." The world narrowed. Ha-Jun released her hand and turned away, his face unreadable. Inside, something burned slow and deadly. His wife hadn't vanished. She hadn't run. She had survived. And someone had lied. As night fell over the estate, Ha-Jun stood alone at the window. Somewhere in the city, his enemies were moving. Somewhere else, Amani was too. Only one question remained. Who would reach her first? Amani pulled her hood lower as she stepped onto the busy street. The city was loud here, buses hissing, people talking, shoes tapping fast on concrete. She stayed close to the crowd, moving like she belonged, even though her heart beat hard in her chest. Eli was safe for now, hidden where no one would think to look, but that did not calm her. Danger did not always knock. Sometimes it passed close enough to feel. Across the street, a black car slowed. Ha-Jun sat inside, his eyes fixed on the moving crowd. Since leaving the estate, he had refused to stay still. His men followed at a distance, unsure what he was hunting. He didn't know either. He only knew something was wrong, and it pulled at him like a thread he could not see. Amani stopped at a crosswalk. She felt it then. A strange weight in the air. The kind that made her skin tighten and her breath slow. She glanced over her shoulder, scanning faces. Strangers. Too many strangers. Still, the feeling stayed. The light changed. She stepped forward. At the same time, Ha-jun opened the car door. The noise of the street rushed in. His gaze lifted, drawn without reason to the opposite side of the road. For one sharp second, his eyes locked onto a woman in a dark coat, her posture tense, her steps careful. His chest tightened. She looked familiar. Not her face, he couldn't see that clearly, but the way she moved. Alert. Guarded. Like someone who had learned to survive. Amani felt dizzy. Her chest burned as if she had run far. She paused mid-step, hand pressing lightly against her side. She didn't know why, only that something powerful was close. Something dangerous. Her instincts screamed to move. A bus passed between them, loud and blinding. When it cleared, the woman was gone. Ha-jun stared at the empty space. His jaw clenched. "Stop the car," he said. Too late. Amani ducked into a side street, breath shallow, heart racing. She leaned against a wall, forcing herself not to panic. The feeling slowly faded, but it left a mark. She knew, deep inside, that she had just missed something important. Ha-jun stepped back into the car, silent. His men waited for orders that didn't come. Outside, the city swallowed its secrets again. Neither of them knew how close they had been. But both felt it. And next time, chance would not protect them. Amani sat on the edge of the narrow bed, listening to the building settle around her. Pipes clicked. A door slammed somewhere below. The safe place no longer felt safe. Since the close call in the street, too many people had started asking questions. Too many helpers had appeared, each offering advice, food, or shelter. Min Seo warned her that fear attracted liars, but Amani had not expected how fast trust could break. One man claimed he could move Eli to a safer place. Another offered a phone that could not be traced. Their voices were calm, their smiles practiced. Amani nodded, thanked them, and said nothing. Inside, her thoughts raced. Every offer felt like a test. Every kindness carried weight. She watched how they spoke, what they avoided saying, and who they looked at when they thought she wasn't paying attention. That night, Amani overheard two allies whispering in the stairwell. They didn't know she was listening. One mentioned money. The other mentioned timing. Her name was spoken once, then her child's. That was enough. Amani stepped back into the shadows, heart pounding, understanding something painful but clear. Some people didn't want to protect her. They wanted to trade her. She held Eli close afterward, pressing her cheek to his soft hair. "I have to choose," she whispered. "And I have to choose right." Being a mother meant making hard decisions alone. It meant walking away before the danger showed its face. She sent quiet messages to only one contact she trusted, then erased everything else. Fewer allies. Fewer risks. Just before dawn, a soft knock came at the door. Amani froze. No one was supposed to come. When the knocking stopped, she waited, listening. Minutes passed. Finally, she opened the door a crack. An envelope lay on the floor. No name. No return address. Her hands shook as she picked it up and closed the door again. Inside was a single sheet of paper. The words were typed, clean and cold. One wrong move, and everything ends. Amani sank onto the floor, pulling Eli into her arms. Whoever sent it knew too much. They knew where she was. They knew what mattered most. And now, every choice could cost her everything. Amani's heart thudded so loudly she was sure anyone nearby could hear it. The basement apartment smelled of damp concrete and old wood. Eli slept in the corner, bundled in a thin blanket, oblivious to the tension in the room. She crouched behind a crate, hands shaking slightly, weapon clutched tight. Every sound outside, footsteps, a creaking pipe, even the distant hum of traffic, made her jump. Footsteps approached the basement door. Heavy, purposeful, steady. Not the hesitant steps of a thief or a street thug. Amani's grip tightened. She didn't know who it was, but she knew she could not allow anyone to take Eli. Not now. Not ever. The door handle rattled. Her breath caught. She raised the weapon, pressing her back against the wall. "Stop right there," she called, her voice sharper than she felt. "One step closer, and I won't hesitate." The door creaked open. A figure stepped in, hands raised, slow and deliberate. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Calm. Amani's heart slammed. "Who are you?" she demanded. The man's voice was low, measured. "Amani, it's me. Don't." She fired a warning shot. The bullet clanged against a metal pipe, sparks flying. Adrenaline surged. Her instincts screamed, "Protect the child." But the figure didn't flinch. He didn't run. He stayed where he was, silent, letting her control the moment. Amani's chest heaved. "Move one step closer, and I swear." The man stepped forward slowly, into the dim light. Something about him made her pause. A familiar stance, the weight of someone who moved like he had authority, like he had been trained for this life. Her breath caught. There was a glimmer of recognition, a hint of something buried deep in her memory. The tension stretched, thick and unbearable. Every second felt like an hour. Her finger trembled on the trigger, eyes locked on his. He stopped, still cautious but controlled. His eyes met hers, and in that instant, something shifted. Recognition. A spark of memory. Amani froze, heart pounding faster than ever. "You, who are you?" The man's lips moved, almost too quietly. "It's me. Ha-Jun." Her grip loosened slightly. Confusion and disbelief crashed through her like a wave. Could she trust him? After everything? After the lies, the danger, the betrayal? And yet, the fire in his eyes was real. The same fire she remembered from before he went to prison. Eli stirred in the corner. Amani's gaze flicked to him, then back. Every instinct told her to run. Every feeling told her to lower the weapon. The room held its breath. Could they finally trust each other, or was this just the beginning of another trap? The hall of the Ha Syndicate headquarters was colder than Amani expected. Marble floors gleamed under harsh lights, and every surface whispered wealth and control. But none of that mattered now. She walked beside Ha-Jun, Eli safe in a sling against her chest, her hands steady despite the fire building inside her. Every step echoed like a drumbeat of justice. At the far end of the hall, her in-laws waited. Their smiles were sharp, practiced. Her mother-in-law's eyes flicked to Eli, then back to her with disdain. Her father-in-law's jaw tightened. They had expected fear. They had expected trembling. They had not expected her. Ha-Jun's presence was enough to silence the room. Men who once bowed to his parents now glanced nervously at him, unsure whether to step forward or retreat. But Amani ignored them all. She stepped into the center of the hall, her gaze locked on the people who had tried to ruin her life. "You thought you could erase me," she said, voice calm, unwavering. "That I would vanish and never return. That my child and I could be destroyed without consequence." Her mother-in-law opened her mouth, but Amani raised a hand, stopping her before a single lie could escape. "You underestimated me. You forgot one thing, I know where your power really lies." With a flick of her wrist, she pulled out a folder, sliding it across the marble floor. Screens in the room lit up, one by one, displaying offshore accounts, hidden transfers, and financial records only the syndicate's most trusted members had ever seen. Names, numbers, secrets. Everything they thought was untouchable was in her hands. Ha-jun stepped beside her, silent but steady. The air in the room felt heavy. Every mouth hung open. Every proud spine bent under the weight of revelation. You see, Amani continued, her eyes blazing. Your empire is only as strong as you think. And it just became mine. Her father-in-law stumbled back, face pale. Her mother-in-law pressed her lips together, speechless. Their allies shuffled, murmured, and fumbled with phones, unsure how to respond. Amani's control over the syndicate accounts made them powerless. Humiliated. Vulnerable. Eli stirred against her chest, and she smiled softly, the calm of victory threading through her fear and adrenaline. Ha-jun placed a hand lightly on her shoulder, a silent affirmation. Together, they had turned the tables completely. But even in this moment of triumph, Amani's gaze swept the room. A few men lingered at the edges, their expressions unreadable. Some faces she did not recognize. Some calculations had not been revealed. The power she held was real, but was it enough? And as the heavy doors of the headquarters closed behind them, a thought cut through her chest like a blade. Victory may have arrived today, but the storm was far from over. The city was quiet that evening, the neon lights casting long reflections on wet streets. Amani walked beside Ha-jun, her hand brushing his, a small but deliberate connection. For the first time in months, her steps felt lighter. Eli giggled in his sling, reaching for the glowing signs above, completely unaware of the battles fought to keep him safe. They found a small rooftop garden above an old building, a hidden patch of green in the endless gray of Seoul. Amani sank onto a bench, letting the cool breeze wash over her. Ha-jun crouched beside her, brushing damp hair from her face. Words weren't needed. They both knew the weight they had carried, the fear, the deception, the constant threat of losing everything. I thought I'd never see you again, Amani said softly, eyes scanning the city below, as if danger could be hiding in any alley. I thought the world had already taken you from me. Ha-jun's hand found hers, gripping firmly. I never stopped looking. I never stopped thinking of you, of Eli. His voice was steady, but there was a raw edge, a mix of relief and lingering anger at all they had lost. For a moment, it felt like the world had paused, letting them breathe. But the shadows of their lives were long, stretching farther than they could see. Even after the humiliation of her in-laws and the takeover of the syndicate accounts, Amani knew the streets had eyes. Allies could turn. Enemies could wait. Min Seo had warned her, power made you a target. And power they now shared was more dangerous than anything that had come before. Eli squealed, reaching toward a flickering lamp. Amani laughed softly, and Ha-jun's expression softened too. For a heartbeat, the future felt possible. The warmth of family, of survival, of victory, it could almost be taken for granted. Almost. Then, Amani's sharp eyes caught movement. Across the alley below, in a narrow shadow between two buildings, a figure stood still. Watching. Hidden, but deliberate. Her heart skipped. She leaned closer to Ha-jun. Look, she whispered. Someone's there. Ha-jun followed her gaze, frowning. The figure didn't move. Didn't signal. Just watched. A cold certainty hit them both. Their battles were far from over. Someone knew about the syndicate accounts, about Eli, about them. The figure disappeared into the darkness before they could see more, leaving only a hint, a shape, a movement, a silent warning. Amani pressed Eli closer, her mind spinning. Ha-jun's hand tightened around hers, eyes scanning every dark corner below. They had won today, yes, but the game had only changed boards. And somewhere, in the shadows, the next move was already being planned. The morning light was weak and gray, slipping through the thin curtains of the safe house. Amani moved quietly, checking Eli first. He stirred in his blanket, yawning, oblivious to the danger that still lingered outside. She smiled softly, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead, but even as warmth filled her chest, a cold awareness pricked the edges of her mind. Nothing was truly safe, not yet. Ha-Jun sat across from her, arms crossed, eyes scanning the city through the small window. He had not slept well. Every shadow outside felt like a threat. Every footstep on the street made him tense. 2 years in prison had taught him that danger never left, it only waited. Now, with Amani and Eli by his side, the stakes were even higher. Min SEO has confirmed the surveillance reports, Ha-Jun said finally, voice low. There are still people watching. Not just random thugs, people connected to the old council. They know what we've done. Amani nodded, swallowing a lump in her throat. She had felt it too, the eyes that never seemed to blink, the silence that followed her like a shadow. But fear no longer ruled her. She had survived worse. She had fought. And now, she had a family worth protecting. They spent the day preparing. Safe routes were memorized. Signals and codes were reviewed. Ha-Jun drilled Amani on escape plans, and she reminded him of the hidden accounts, the tools of leverage they could use. Together, they were a force the syndicate had never imagined, a mix of strategy, knowledge, and raw determination. As dusk fell, Amani stepped onto the balcony to breathe. The city stretched before her, bright lights masking dark corners, the hum of life hiding secrets beneath. And then she saw it. Across the alley, just as the sky darkened, a shape moved between the buildings. The shadowy figure from the rooftop. Watching. Waiting. Her pulse quickened. She reached for the binoculars left by Min SEO. The figure was gone, vanished as if it had never been, but something remained. A folded envelope lay at the edge of the alley, heavy with intent. Amani picked it up carefully, sliding the paper open. One line, typed and deliberate, made her stomach twist. This is far from over. Ha-Jun appeared behind her, eyes narrowing. He took the note and read it, his jaw tightening. They're testing us, he said, voice grim. Seeing how fast we react. Seeing what we fear. Amani pressed Eli closer, holding him tight. Fear lingered at the edges of their victory, but it no longer had the power to paralyze them. Together, they would face what came next. They had survived lies, betrayal, and threats before. But now, the shadow was more real than ever. And it would return.